Ever wonder why a felt puppet was treated like a real teenager on primetime TV? Cousin Skeeter, Nickelodeon's bizarre 1998 sitcom, hid some jaw-dropping secrets behind its laugh track. From celebrity NBA directors to cocaine-inspired nicknames and trapdoor stages, this puppet show was stranger than fiction, and nobody on screen ever acknowledged the obvious weirdness happening right in front of them. Fact 1. Puppet reality never acknowledged. Here's something that will blow your mind about Cousin Skeeter. Despite the main character being an obvious hand puppet made of felt and fabric, not a single person in the entire show ever mentions this incredibly obvious fact. Throughout all 52 episodes that aired from 1998 to 2001, every human character treats Skeeter exactly like he's a real teenage boy, never once questioning why their family member happens to be a 3-foot-tall puppet with visible seams and a puppeteer's hand clearly operating his movements. This wasn't some fantasy world where puppets were normal parts of society. The show took place in regular New York City, with Bobby's family living in a typical apartment building, attending regular school, and dealing with everyday teenage problems. Yet somehow, Bobby's parents, Andre and Vanessa, his girlfriend Nina, his teachers, classmates, and even random strangers on the street all interact with Skeeter as if he's completely human. They have serious conversations with him, get angry at his antics, and include him in family activities without ever showing the slightest confusion about his very obvious puppet nature. What makes this even weirder is that the show used a single-camera format, meaning viewers could clearly see Skeeter from multiple angles, making it impossible to hide the fact that he was being operated by puppeteers Drew Massey and Alice Dinian from below. The characters would look directly at this felt puppet, have heart-to-heart conversations with him, and treat his advice seriously, creating one of the most surreal viewing experiences in television history. This deliberate choice to never acknowledge the elephant in the room became the show's defining characteristic, leaving audiences wondering if everyone was part of some elaborate shared delusion. Fact 2. Inspired by Nike commercial. The entire concept for Cousin Skeeter came from one of the most popular advertising campaigns of the 1990s. Nike's commercials featuring NBA star Penny Hardaway and his miniature puppet version called Little Penny. These ads, which ran throughout the mid-90s, showed the Orlando Magic point guard having conversations with a small puppet version of himself voiced by comedian Chris Rock, who would give Penny advice and make wisecracks about his basketball career and personal life. The Nike commercials were hugely successful and became a cultural phenomenon, with Little Penny becoming almost as famous as the real Penny Hardaway himself. The puppet would appear in various situations, from locker room talks to everyday scenarios, always treated as if he were a real person, despite being obviously made of fabric and operated by puppeteers. What made these commercials so memorable was the seamless way they presented this puppet-human dynamic without ever acknowledging how strange it was. When television producers Mike Tollin and Brian Robbins were developing new shows for Nickelodeon, they saw the potential to expand this puppet meets reality concept into a full television series. The idea of a puppet character being treated as completely normal in everyday situations had already proven popular with audiences through the Nike campaign, so they decided to create their own version for kids. Instead of a basketball star getting advice from his puppet alter ego, they developed the story of a regular teenager whose life gets turned upside down when his puppet cousin comes to live with his family. The transition from a 30-second commercial concept to a full half-hour sitcom required expanding the idea significantly, but the core appeal remained the same. The surreal comedy that comes from everyone treating an obvious puppet as if he's just another member of the family. Fact 3. Shaq directed an episode. One of the most unexpected behind-the-scenes facts about Cousin Skeeter involves NBA superstar Shaquille O'Neal stepping behind the camera to direct an episode of the show. The 7'1" basketball legend took on the role of director for the Season 1 episode titled Mo Skeeter Blues, proving that his talents extended far beyond dominating opponents on the basketball court during his time with the Los Angeles Lakers. What makes this collaboration even more interesting is that Shaq didn't work alone on this project. The episode was co-written by Nick Cannon, who was just starting his career in entertainment at the time and would later become a major television personality, comedian, and entrepreneur. This pairing brought together one of basketball's biggest stars with a young, up-and-coming talent in the entertainment industry, creating a unique creative partnership for a Nickelodeon children's show. Shaq's involvement in directing television wasn't completely out of left field, as he had already begun exploring entertainment ventures beyond basketball during the late 1990s. He had appeared in movies like Kazam and Steel, and was actively pursuing various media projects while maintaining his dominant presence in the NBA. His decision to direct an episode of Cousin Skeeter showed his willingness to experiment with different aspects of television production and work with unconventional formats like puppet-human interactions. The episode itself fit perfectly into the show's established format, with Skeeter getting into his usual mischief, while Bobby tried to manage the chaos that followed. Having a basketball legend direct scenes involving a 3-foot-tall puppet character interacting with teenage actors created one of the more surreal moments in the show's production history, though viewers watching at home had no idea about the famous athlete calling the shots from behind the cameras. Fact 4. Sets built on trapdoors. The production of Cousin Skeeter required some seriously creative engineering to make the puppet interactions look believable, which led to one of the most elaborate set constructions in Nickelodeon history. Every single set used in the show was built 4 to 5 feet above ground level, creating a massive network of hidden spaces underneath, where the puppeteers could work without being seen by the cameras or interfering with the actors' movements. This wasn't just a simple raised platform situation either. The production team installed trapdoors throughout every set piece, from the family's apartment living room to Bobby's bedroom, the school hallways, and even outdoor scenes. These carefully concealed openings allowed puppeteers Drew Massey and Alice Danayan to pop up wherever Skeeter needed to appear, then quickly disappear back into the hidden underground area when the scene moved to a different location. The complexity of this setup meant that the actors had to navigate their performances while walking on what was essentially an elaborate stage floor filled with secret compartments. They needed to be constantly aware of where the trapdoors were located, so they wouldn't accidentally step on one during filming, while also maintaining their performances and delivering their lines naturally. This created an additional layer of difficulty for everyone involved in the production. The elevated sets also required special considerations for camera angles and lighting, since the crew had to make sure the underground puppeteer areas remained completely hidden from view, while still allowing enough space for the puppet operators to move around freely. The result was a complex maze of hidden passages and concealed openings that made the Walker family apartment look normal on screen, while hiding an entire secondary workspace just a few feet below where the human actors were performing their scenes. Fact 5. Actors never heard Bill Bellamy. Here's a mind-bending detail about how Cousin Skeeter was actually filmed. Throughout the entire production process, the human actors never heard comedian Bill Bellamy's voice coming from Skeeter during any of the scenes they were shooting together. Instead, puppeteer Drew Massey would provide Skeeter's voice live on set, speaking all of the character's lines while simultaneously operating the puppet from his hidden position beneath the raised floors. This meant that Robert Richard, Megan Good, Rondell Sheridan, Angela Means, and every other actor who shared scenes with Skeeter were actually performing opposite Drew Massey's interpretation of the character, rather than the version that audiences would eventually see on television. Massey had to deliver all of Skeeter's dialogue with the proper timing, energy, and personality to help the other actors react naturally and maintain the rhythm of each scene. The process created a strange disconnect between the filming experience and the final product, since Bill Bellamy would record his version of Skeeter's dialogue separately in a sound studio, then his voice would be synced to the puppet's mouth movements during post-production. This meant that when the cast members sat down to watch the completed episodes on television, they were hearing Skeeter's voice for the very first time, just like regular viewers at home. The actors had to trust that Bellamy's final performance would match the energy and timing that Massey had provided during filming, creating a unique challenge for everyone involved. They were essentially acting opposite one character during production, then discovering a completely different vocal personality had been layered over their scene partner when the episodes finally aired on Nickelodeon. Fact 6. Friday Movie Cast Reunion. Cousin Skeeter actually featured a mini reunion of actors from the 1995 comedy film Friday, though most viewers probably never realized the connection between the family-friendly Nickelodeon show and the rated Ice Cube movie. Angela Means, who played Bobby's mother Vanessa Walker on Cousin Skeeter, had previously appeared in Friday as Felicia, the character who became famous for the memorable "Bye Felicia" line that turned into a major internet meme years later. What makes this connection even more interesting is that Meagan Good, who played Nina on Cousin Skeeter, also appeared in Friday when she was just 13 years old. This was actually one of her very first film roles, marking the beginning of what would become a successful acting career that eventually led to her starring role on the Nickelodeon series. Her appearance in Friday came 3 years before Cousin Skeeter premiered, so by the time she was working alongside Angela Means on the Puppet sitcom, they had already shared the experience of being part of the same film production. The two actresses didn't share any scenes together in Friday, so their work on Cousin Skeeter represented the first time they actually got to act opposite each other, despite having appeared in the same movie. This created an unusual situation where a children's television show brought together two performers who had both been part of a very different type of entertainment project just a few years earlier. The casting of both actresses on Cousin Skeeter wasn't necessarily planned as a Friday reunion, but it created an unexpected link between the urban comedy film and the puppet-filled family sitcom. Neither show nor movie made any reference to this connection, leaving it as an interesting piece of trivia that only became apparent to fans who noticed both actresses had appeared in Ice Cube's breakout comedy hit. Fact 7. Sugar Booger Cocaine Connection. One of the most eyebrow-raising details about Cousin Skeeter involves the puppet's embarrassing childhood nickname, which may have contained a hidden adult reference that flew completely over the heads of young viewers. Throughout the series, it was revealed that Skeeter's nickname back in elementary school was Sugar Booger, a name that seemingly sounds innocent enough for a children's television show about a mischievous puppet character. However, when you reverse the words sugar booger, you get booger sugar, which happens to be a well-known street slang term for cocaine. This particular piece of drug terminology was fairly common in urban communities during the 1990s, making it likely that at least some of the adult writers working on the show would have been familiar with this connection when they created Skeeter's backstory. The question that naturally arises is whether this was purely coincidental, or if the writers deliberately chose this nickname as a way to sneak an adult joke past the network censors and into a kids' show. This type of hidden reference wasn't uncommon in children's television during that era, as writers often included subtle jokes aimed at parents who might be watching alongside their children. What makes this even more interesting is that Skeeter's character was known for his impulsive behavior, quick mood swings, and tendency to fly into sudden rages, particularly when anyone commented on his height. Some fans have jokingly suggested that his erratic personality traits could be explained by his nickname's hidden meaning. Though this interpretation ventures into pure speculation territory, whether intentional or accidental, the Sugar Booger nickname represents one of those moments where a seemingly innocent children's show contained content that takes on a completely different meaning when viewed through adult eyes, joining the ranks of countless other examples of questionable references that somehow made it past television network standards and practices departments. Fact 8. Height Rage Trigger. Throughout the entire run of Cousin Skeeter, the puppet character had one guaranteed way to transform from his usual mischievous but good-natured personality into an absolutely furious ball of rage. Make any comment about his obvious lack of height. Skeeter's extreme sensitivity about being short became his defining character flaw and provided a consistent source of conflict throughout the series, creating dramatic moments that often shifted the tone from lighthearted comedy to genuine anger. This wasn't just a minor personality quirk either, but a serious behavioral issue that would cause Skeeter to completely lose control of his temper whenever anyone made even the slightest reference to his size. The show depicted these outbursts as genuine fury, rather than comedic tantrums, with Skeeter becoming defensive, hostile, and sometimes even threatening toward whoever had made the offending comment about his stature. What made this character trait particularly interesting was how it affected his relationships with family members and friends throughout the series. Even people who cared about Skeeter, like his cousin Bobby or Bobby's girlfriend Nina, It would sometimes accidentally trigger these explosive reactions by making innocent observations about his height during heated arguments or moments of frustration. The show even explored this sensitivity in one of Skeeter's nightmare sequences during an episode called April Foolish, where his worst fears played out as he imagined himself getting progressively shorter and shorter until he eventually shrank down to nothing and disappeared completely. This recurring theme of height-related anger became such a central part of his character that other people in the show learned to avoid the topic entirely, treating his size issues as a serious emotional trigger rather than something to joke about casually. Fact 9. Celebrity friend claims unexplained. One of the most bizarre running elements of Cousin Skeeter involved the puppet character's casual claims about being personal friends with some of the biggest celebrities of the late 1990s. Yet the show never bothered to explain how a 3-foot-tall puppet from Georgia had managed to develop these high-profile relationships. Skeeter would regularly mention his friendships with basketball legend Michael Jordan, the colorful NBA star Dennis Rodman, and hip-hop artist MC Lyte, as if these connections were completely normal parts of his everyday life. The most intriguing of these alleged friendships was with MC Lyte, because Skeeter didn't just claim to know the famous rapper, but actually stated that he had saved her life at some point in the past. This dramatic backstory was mentioned multiple times throughout the series, yet the show never provided any details about when, where, or how this life-saving incident had supposedly occurred, leaving viewers to wonder what kind of dangerous situation a puppet could have possibly rescued a grown woman from. What made these celebrity friendships even more surreal was that some of these famous people actually appeared on the show as guest stars, seemingly confirming that Skeeter's claims were legitimate within the show's universe. MC Lyte herself appeared in episodes, treating Skeeter like an old friend and validating his stories about their relationship, while other celebrities made cameo appearances that supported his name-dropping habits. The show presented these celebrity connections as completely factual, without ever addressing the obvious questions about how or why these relationships had developed. Viewers were simply expected to accept that this puppet character had somehow entered the social circles of professional athletes and Grammy-nominated musicians, creating yet another layer of unexplained weirdness in a series that specialized in presenting the impossible as perfectly ordinary. Fact 10. 702's theme song connection. The catchy theme song that opened every episode of Cousin Skeeter wasn't just a random piece of music created specifically for the show, but was actually an alternate version of Stilo, a popular R&B hit by the group 702 that had reached number 32 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart back in 1996. This connection gave the Nickelodeon puppet sitcom a direct link to the mainstream music world that most children's television shows never achieved. What made this musical connection even more impressive was the involvement of Missy Elliott, who co-wrote the original Stilo track and was already establishing herself as one of hip-hop's most innovative producers and songwriters during the mid-1990s. Having someone of Elliott's caliber involved in creating music for a kids' show demonstrated the level of talent that Nickelodeon was able to attract for their programming during this era. 702. The group behind the original song consisted of sisters Irish and Lamisha Grinstead, along with their friend Camila Williams, and they were signed to Motown Records when Stilo became their breakthrough hit. The song's popularity on both radio and music television made it a recognizable tune that parents watching Cousin Skeeter with their children would likely remember from just a couple years earlier. The decision to use an alternate version of an existing hit song, rather than creating completely original theme music, showed how the show's producers wanted to tap into contemporary R&B and hip-hop culture. This choice aligned perfectly with the show's overall approach of incorporating elements of Black popular culture into a family-friendly format, creating a soundtrack that felt current and relevant to both kids and adults who might be watching together. Fact 11. Created by former rapper. The personality that made Skeeter such a memorable and energetic character actually came from a very personal place, as show creator Alonzo Brown drew directly from his own experiences as a performer in the hip-hop music industry when developing the puppet's quick-talking, charismatic persona. Brown had been part of a rap group called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which gave him first-hand knowledge of the fast-paced, confident speaking style and larger-than-life personality traits that he would later incorporate into Skeeter's character. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a hip-hop duo that achieved some success during the 1980s, particularly with their hit song Genius Rap, which helped establish them in the New York rap scene during the genre's early development. Brown's experience performing as part of this group meant he understood the energy, timing, and verbal dexterity that made certain personalities stand out in hip-hop culture, and he channeled these qualities into creating a puppet character who could hold his own in rapid-fire dialogue scenes. This background explains why Skeeter's speech patterns and mannerisms felt so authentic to viewers familiar with hip-hop culture, since they were based on Brown's real experiences as a rapper, rather than being created by someone trying to imitate that style from the outside. The puppet's quick wit, confident delivery, and ability to talk his way into and out of trouble all reflected the skills that Brown had developed during his time performing in the competitive world of early hip-hop. Brown's transition from rapper to television creator represented an interesting career evolution that brought authentic urban cultural elements into mainstream children's programming. His musical background helped ensure that Skeeter's character felt genuine rather than like a caricature, contributing to the show's success in connecting with audiences who appreciated both the puppet's entertainment value and his cultural authenticity. Fact 12. Space Adventure Memory Wipe. One of the most bizarre episodes in Cousin Skeeter's entire run was the made-for-television movie called New Kids on the Planet, which took the characters on a completely unexpected science fiction adventure that involved alien abduction, intergalactic travel, and a storyline so outrageous that the writers had to include a memory-erasing plot device to explain why none of it was ever mentioned in future episodes. The movie begins when Skeeter, Bobby, Nina, and Nicole attend space camp, where Skeeter's usual troublemaking leads to the group accidentally launching themselves into outer space, aboard what they thought was just a simulator, but turned out to be a real NASA spacecraft called the Prometheus 7. Once in space, they encounter aliens and get swept up in an adventure that involves fighting a stereotypical insect queen villain who has been plotting world domination for 50 million years. During their space adventure, Skeeter actually manages to save the day by thwarting the alien queen's plans and even plants a secret agent who will work to prevent future invasion attempts, making him an unlikely intergalactic hero. However, the writers apparently realized that having the main characters become space-traveling alien fighters would completely change the tone and direction of the entire series going forward. To solve this problem, the movie ends with mysterious agents wearing golf pants who use memory-erasing devices on Bobby, Nina, and Nicole, wiping their memories of the entire space adventure in a scene that directly references the Men in Black movies. Interestingly, Skeeter manages to avoid having his memory erased by looking away at the crucial moment, meaning he's the only character who remembers their incredible journey to save Earth from alien invasion, though he never mentions it again in subsequent episodes. Fact 13. Portuguese language skills. One of the most unexpected moments in Cousin Skeeter revealed that the puppet character possessed fluent Portuguese language skills that had never been mentioned or hinted at in any previous episodes. This linguistic ability was discovered during a scene where Skeeter had apparently caused some kind of accident or mishap, possibly involving knocking over a dinosaur skeleton display, which drew the attention of two Portuguese-speaking women who began commenting about the situation. The women, thinking that Skeeter couldn't understand them, made remarks in Portuguese about the short one being in trouble, clearly referring to his obvious lack of height, while they laughed among themselves about the chaotic scene he had created. This should have been a safe way for them to make observations without offending anyone, since most people wouldn't have been able to understand what they were saying in their native language. However, much to everyone's surprise, Skeeter immediately fired back with a perfectly fluent Portuguese response, saying, "Hey, I'm not short, I'm still growing." This moment not only demonstrated his unexpected multilingual abilities, but also showed that even when people tried to comment on his height in a foreign language, he would still react with his characteristic anger and defensiveness about his size. The scene created a perfect example of what linguists call a bilingual backfire, where someone assumes they can speak freely in another language, only to discover that their target actually understands every word they're saying. What made this moment particularly memorable was that the show never explained how or why Skeeter had learned Portuguese, where he had practiced speaking it, or whether he knew any other languages besides English and Portuguese, leaving viewers to wonder what other hidden talents this puppet character might possess. Fact 14. No merchandising despite success. Here's one of the most baffling business decisions in Nickelodeon history. Despite Cousin Skeeter being consistently ranked as the network's top-rated live-action series in 1999, according to Variety magazine, the show received absolutely zero merchandising support or promotional tie-ins that would normally accompany such a successful children's program. This complete lack of commercial products became so noticeable that even fans of the show began commenting on the strange absence of any Skeeter-related items in stores. The merchandising drought was so complete that families visiting Universal Studios in California, which housed Nickelodeon's official theme park store, found no Cousin Skeeter souvenirs, toys, clothing, or memorabilia of any kind. Despite the show's popularity with kids and consistent high ratings, this absence was particularly striking when compared to other Nickelodeon shows from the same era, which typically generated extensive product lines, including action figures, t-shirts, lunchboxes, and various other items that capitalized on their characters' appeal. What makes this situation even more puzzling is that puppet characters generally translate very well into toy form, since children already associate them with being physical objects that can be held and played with. Skeeter's distinctive appearance and memorable personality seemed perfectly suited for creating plush toys, action figures, or even simple hand puppets that kids could use to recreate their favorite scenes from the show. The complete absence of any commercial products tied to Cousin Skeeter represents a missed opportunity that becomes even more apparent when considering how many other Nickelodeon properties from that time period generated millions of dollars in merchandise sales. Whether this was due to licensing complications, concerns about the show's content, or simply poor business decisions, the lack of merchandising remains one of the most inexplicable aspects of the show's otherwise successful run. Fact 15. Completely lost from reruns. Cousin Skeeter holds the unusual distinction of being a successful Nickelodeon series that has completely vanished from television screens, with its final broadcast occurring on September 6, 2003, marking the end of any official presence on cable television or streaming platforms. This makes it one of the most inaccessible shows from Nickelodeon's classic era, especially considering that many other programs from the same time period have found new life through various rerun blocks and digital streaming services. The show's absence becomes even more striking when you consider that Nickelodeon has made significant efforts to bring back nostalgic programming through initiatives like the Nick Rewind block on Teen Nick, which regularly features shows from the 1990s and early 2000s. Despite this focus on classic content that appeals to adults who grew up watching these programs, Cousin Skeeter has never been included in any of these nostalgic programming lineups, not even as part of special throwback events or anniversary celebrations. The complete blackout extends beyond traditional television into the modern streaming era, where the show has never appeared on any major platform, including Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, or even Paramount Plus, which serves as the official streaming home for most Nickelodeon content. This absence is particularly notable since many other puppet-based children's shows have found successful second lives on streaming platforms, where new generations of kids discover them alongside parents wanting to share their childhood favorites. The only way for curious viewers to watch Cousin Skeeter episodes today is through unofficial uploads on video-sharing websites like YouTube and Dailymotion, where a small number of episodes have been posted by fans who recorded them during the original broadcast run. However, these uploads represent just a tiny fraction of the show's 52 total episodes, making the complete series essentially lost media for most practical purposes.